All right, let's dive right in. We are about to trace the epic 3,000-year journey of a single humble herb. It's a plant that has traveled from the realm of ancient myths and sacred texts all the way to kitchens and medicine cabinets right around the world. It's been given a lot of names over the centuries, but one of the most dramatic, well, it comes from ancient Chinese lore, the fountain of life. A name like that tells you right away, we're not just talking about any old plant here. We're talking about a true legend. And that legend is perfectly captured in the story of Li Qing Yuan. Now, whether it's 100% fact or just fantastic folklore, the tale goes that this herbalist lived to the unbelievable age of 256, and he credited his long life to a daily elixir that heavily featured, you guessed it, Gotu Kola. But the stories don't just stop with people. Another one of its nicknames is tiger herb, and this one comes from the ancient observation that wounded tigers would actually seek out patches of Gotu Kola and roll around in them, as if they instinctively knew the plant could help heal their wounds. So these are amazing stories, right? But they bring up a really important question. Are they just folklore? Or do these millennial-old legends maybe point to something a little more real? So let's try to separate the myth from the history and see where the documented trail actually begins. Our investigation starts not just hundreds, but thousands of years ago, buried deep within some of the world's oldest surviving medical texts. And this right here just brilliantly illustrates the herb's incredible historical pedigree. I mean, we see its first documented use popping up in Indian Ayurveda as far back as 1000 BCE. Then it's recorded in China's foundational Shenong herbal, and later it's written into the revered Ayurvedic text, the Sushruta Samsita. So this isn't just one culture, it's like a cross-continental consensus. You see, in Ayurveda, Gotu Kola wasn't just another herb on the list. It was elevated to the really prestigious class of a Medhya Rasayana. And what that means is, this was a special designation for herbs they believed were powerful rejuvenators specifically for the mind, for memory, and for intellect. It was basically seen as a tonic for consciousness itself. And what's really remarkable is that while Ayurveda was documenting this over in India, it had an equally important place in China. Over there, it was known as Ji Shui Cao, and it was classified as a cooling herb that supported the body's key energy channels. So what we're seeing are two great ancient systems, independently arriving at very similar conclusions about this one plant. So, from these ancient texts, the herb's story just unfolds across an entire continent, making its way from the scrolls of scholars and into the daily lives of everyday people. Now, this part of the journey is so fascinating because Gotu Kola just seamlessly wove itself into the cultural fabric of Southeast Asia. In Sri Lanka, for example, it's a staple food, served up as a fresh salad called maluma. Over in Thailand, it's blended into a really popular health drink. This just goes to show its unique dual identity. It wasn't only seen as medicine, it was also just food. And you can really see this widespread adoption across Asia just by looking at all the different names that are picked up. Each name is like a little cultural fingerprint. In Singalese, Gotu Kola means cone leaf, but in Sanskrit, it's Mandukarparni, which translates to frog-leaved, and that's a reference to the shape of its leaves, which apparently look like a frog's webbed feet. Okay, the next chapter in this global journey takes us west, because this ancient Eastern herb eventually caught the attention of a whole new part of the world. Its arrival wasn't a sudden thing, though. First, you had European botanists in Asia during the colonial era who documented the plant for European science. Then, during the 1800s, it actually found a place in French medicine. By the end of that century, it had finally gained enough traction to be recognized more broadly as a legitimate botanical medicine in the West. But here's an interesting little side note to this story, a classic case of mistaken identity. In some parts of India, Gotu Kola is called Brahmi, but that name more accurately belongs to a totally different Ayurvedic herb called Bacopa mineriae. This confusion really highlights just how challenging it can be to translate ancient herbal knowledge across different cultures, and honestly, it still persists to this day. So, after this incredible journey through time and across continents, we can finally step back and see the full, truly remarkable legacy of this one small plant. When you connect all the dots from its very first mention in those Ayurvedic texts, all the way to its use in modern herbalism, Gotu Kola has a documented history of continuous human use spanning over 3 millennia. Let that sink in. 3,000 years. That is an absolutely astounding track record. And at the end of the day, whether you call it the fountain of life,
the herb of longevity, or a medyarasayana, its core reputation has stayed remarkably consistent. Across thousands of years and countless cultures, it has always been known as a plant that supports vitality and the mind.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The story of Gotu Kola started with these legends of longevity and tigers. But as we've seen, those legends were actually backed by a deep, documented history of careful observation and use. It really makes you wonder, how much of our ancient folklore is simply natural wisdom, passed down to us in the form of a great story?